Starmer's U-turns, sticky bears and monstrous human experiments. Welcome to Mark and Pete, two blokes with half an opinion. Now, here's our first thought.
Bitter and twisted. If you are constantly changing your mind, twisting and U-turning on everything you said, folk will find that you're not aligned or behind, and whether you're talking out the back of your head. Yes, well, when it comes to U-turns, how many times can you twist and turn, Mr. Keir Starmer? It seems that yet again we're on a third U-turn. Keir Starmer has already changed his mind on the winter fuel. We've already seen his change on the statutory inquiry in grooming gangs, and now it's on to the welfare state. Mr. Pete, I wonder, does Keir Starmer wake up each morning wondering what decision he's going to have to make today and then change it the next day?
Yes, well, I think probably what happens to Keir Starmer, I can picture it now. He wakes up maybe in a reverie after a long...
with a sore neck.
Yes, with a sore neck. No, with a long sleep, and he wakes up just for that moment in the morning when you're stretching and everything's just right with the world, and then suddenly he remembers, oh no, I'm Keir Starmer, and everything just falls apart with that realisation, because this is the position I'm in, Mr. Mark, with the leadership in Britain. I think what we find is that we have, I would say, I don't know whether you agree with this, poor leadership.
Understatement of the week.
Yeah, and I thought going back a bit, but going back in terms of prime ministers, not in time, very far. I thought that at the time that we had the worst prime minister we could have ever had just a few years ago in the person of David Cameron. Right, so just going back a few. And then each successive prime minister after that, I thought, no, this is the... Hang on, no, there's a new prime minister. No, this is... No, hang on, here's a new prime minister. No, this one's only been there a few days and she's gone. And then, oh, no, and then now we got to Keir Starmer, and I've once again thought, no, this is the worst one. I mean, it's just extraordinary, isn't it, how poorly we've done in terms of prime ministers in this country. I suppose you could argue that it's our fault, seeing as we've been voting.
The country has voted for
it.
Yes.
Yes. So what am I saying? What do I think about this? Yes, I think his vacillations are what make him even worse. I think people making bad decisions is one thing. When you make bad decisions, then reverse them, and then reverse them back, you end up being not just a bad leader, but not a leader at all.
That's the problem. And I think this is where we see that politicians at any level will often be in disagreement on policies. But what we're seeing here is constant change. Some of these actual points were really sort of baked in their manifesto of the sort of things that they promised the electorate that they would do. Now, we also know that the welfare state is so important to the British people. That's not an issue. What the challenge here is, and this is where we are today, is that he's now backtracked on the cuts to the welfare state. Quite a lot of it was really down to detail, because that would have been the next stage of debate in Parliament. But what Keir Starmer's had to do is really change quite a lot, effectively watering down his welfare state policies, and particularly where the investments are going. Many of the backbenchers recognise that in their own constituencies, they were really elected on the basis that they would invest more and they wouldn't actually withdraw funds. Now, I will say that I know that the subject itself is quite an emotive one, because many people will say that the welfare state is one that maybe it's something where it's got to a position where we can't afford it in its current state. Sure. Yeah. So that's one subject in itself. But we're not talking about that. What we're talking about is leadership, where constant changes of policies, decisions. We're now at a point really where, and I think this is the thing that is, after 1 year of the Labour Party being in power, really questioning whether they've got the right acumen to lead Britain back to being a true leader and to get the state of Britain away and out of debt, in a clear position with clear, defined, and supported policies. It's quite remarkable to me, I think, that when you're a leader, that you should have so many dissenting backbenchers really come against you, against what is a very, very important subject. So, Mr. P, I wonder, where does he go from here? Does he just continue in this way? It's very difficult to get rid of a Labour Party leader, as we've known through history.
Mm.
Not that actually future doesn't say that that's going to be the path, but he's really putting himself in an ignominious position. What should he be doing if you was Sir Keir Starmer?
Well, well, look, if I were Keir Starmer, I would
You
also
woke up
have
one
those
morning.
nightmares each morning. But I would, yeah, well, I would actually take time out. I would say now, right? I'd take say time out, and you don't need to, you don't shouldn't say I'm taking time out, right? Because that may something's happened to. No, I'm calling a, a big meeting and have all the people there. But what you're actually doing is you're formulating your policy statements for each section of what we've seen in Vacillate on. Come to decisions and then follow it through for the next few years. He needs to just. I mean, it's no point. Going one way then the other, you're not actually leading anywhere. And I think what he needs to do is take a step back from party politics and wonder why he's had to change his mind so much. And the reason is because he started off being what you might call belligerent, because he thought he had this huge majority, which he did due to his popularity, which was not true. And
Yeah.
so, now seeing that the truth, let's reevaluate, come to an actual plan, a worked out plan. Now, because he has all the details at his fingertips, or should have, it shouldn't take too long for him to put that together. So, what I'm saying is, not tell us he's doing it, just doing it, do it, step back, and he could cover this with, having a big meeting maybe at Chequers and have all the people there. He doesn't need to be engaging with his people, as in the cabinet. Doesn't need to be engaging with them the whole time. That's what I would do. I'd make a restart and then don't call it a relaunch. It looks bad, but effectively a relaunch, because he's sometimes made better decisions by going back on what he's said. But in going back, it makes you seem vacillating. The grooming gang inquiry, winter fuel payments, the welfare reform stuff. It You could argue it's pragmatism, but I think it's gone further than that. It's it's a bit cowardly, isn't it?
Well, the worst part about this now, with the latest U-turn,
Yes.
is that it now affects the Treasury accounts. Because
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
what the cuts were originally aligned with the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, was to go into the basically the forthcoming August budgets. And that would have balanced the sheets a little
Mm.
bit better. But by not having these cuts, it means that Rachel Reeves is under tremendous pressure to be able to find other cuts elsewhere.
Yes. Yeah.
So ironically, that even though that a U-turn can be made, you have to sometimes adapt, you
Yeah.
sometimes do have to change policy, or you have to at least adjust some of your details of plans. But the key is the consequence, because unfortunately, with the state of the nation's finances being very high in debt is very expensive at this moment in time if you're borrowing money. It means that Chancellor really has yet another problem on her plate. So I think that what this has done actually is put pressure on someone else, and that is now the Chancellor. And the only
Yes.
other way that I think that this could be resolved, yes, folks, is that it might mean that there may be some increases of taxes on the way.
Lovely.
Well, let's move on to another subject. Now, this one, I think we might say, is very much a sticky story.
Mm.
If you stole from the honey store with a huge appetite for so much more and have an extremely sticky paw, you'll be a bear with an aching jaw. Yes. Now, if you happen to be a little bear by the name of Mish and Lucy, yes, you might be guilty. because two bears sparked incredible media frenzy when the whole of the wildlife park, which happened in
Yes.
Wildwood, Devon, was closed because the two bears broke into the honey store, very adept, very,
Yes,
very
indeed.
cunning,
Yes. Well
and
done.
ate all of the honey. Now, I must ask you, Mr. Pete, we think of bears as being wild and aggressive, but these were very, very cunning. What say you about Mish and Lucy, who are incidentally now back in their pens, looking very, very, very pleased with themselves?
Oh, I thought you were going to say sheepish, but no, they.
Well, no, they
I
ate the
suppose.
sheep as well.
Yeah, they are. They've done. They are very clever and have done very well. I think they should have their own podcast,
I think so.
giving their
Grisly as
giving
that
their
may be.
views. Yes. But yeah. They escaped their enclosure. They got into the food storage building. They devoured lots and lots of honey. I mean, this is the sort of thing that a bear should do. If you're fans of Winnie
Yes.
the Pooh, who spent his life searching after honey, it's sort of. It's like how sometimes reality doesn't quite match up. It isn't quite how you things are not quite how you see them as being. It's not like in the movies. It's not how you expect, and yet this is. It makes reality more real because they're doing it properly. The bears
Yes.
are helping themselves to honey.
Yeah.
I mean, the next thing they'll be doing is they'll be, going up to microphones, being interviewed, and saying, "Yes, Miss, she's smarter than the average bear," and all that. It's going to be brilliant. I'm
Yes.
looking forward to it. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
and I think sometimes I put in a Bible verse here, it's Isaiah 43 verse 20 says, "The beasts of the field will honour me, the jackals and the owls, because I provide water in the wilderness." It's like God is saying. He doesn't actually mention bears there, but bears will honour me, and by they're being clever, they're being resourceful, and so He then provides for them. In this case, not water, honey, but they're bears. That's what they want. So I think this is a great story, and it makes you think, the world is a better place than I thought.
Well, I agree if you can bear it. However, what
Yes.
I will say
Thank
is,
you.
according to the World Wide Fund for Nature, these were European bears, and in fact, they were actually rescued from Albanian mountains.
Yes,
But
very good.
they are, what's incredible is that they can grow up to 6.5 feet, 1.9 feet in
Meters.
meters in length,
Yeah.
and they can weigh. And this is the thing, they can weigh up to 680 kilograms.
Well, eating
Quite
honey is
heavy.
not going to
And eating
do
honey
very
is not
well
going to
for their
help on your
diet.
diet. But
Yes,
the thing
exactly.
is that what's incredible is they're so adept, despite their size, they can stand up on two legs and communicate through scratch marks on trees and many
Yeah.
other different things like that. So these carnivores, living scary little creatures, maybe not so little now, really actually are very intelligent. And I think that's the thing
Yes.
which I think is key, is that they learn very quickly.
Yes, I think we can learn from this. I mean, if, they were decisive. They had a
Yes, they
plan.
had a plan.
Their plan was get the honey, eat the honey, have a nice nap, and they followed through. And that's more we can say for the UK government under Starmer. So,
Yes.
I would say to the Bears, to Mish and Lucy, don't resign. Starmer, consider it.
Yes, and we would welcome them to be interviewed on this podcast in the next edition
Absolutely.
if they
Yes.
are available.
Yes, and stand for
We
Parliament.
will bring the honey.
Yes, of course.
Well, now we move on to a different story, which is, dare I say, a monstrous experiment. Molly Kuehl thought that science was cool and wanted to create life in her own way. So she went to school to learn the rule for the building blocks of DNA. Now, Molly Kuehl experimented with every lab tool and assembled a monster one dark day. It became a Labour Party political fool to ridicule. Now it's gone astray, and we must all pray.
Yes.
Yes,
Time
the
to pray,
monstrous
indeed.
experiments
Yeah.
that are upon us. Well, it is, I'm afraid, actually genuinely true that a controversial project is creating the building blocks of human life from scratch. Yes, well, it actually seems that the world's largest medical charity, the Wellcome Trust, has given an initial £10 million to start the project. And it says that the potential to do more than harm, more good than harm, is to accelerate the treatments for incurable diseases. Mr. Pete, I wonder whether you think that this is a good thing for medical science or whether you think it's just a Frankenstein monster experiment.
Hmm. Well, it could go two ways. I mean, the thing is that it does seem that if you're, it seems, this is a look at the appearance of it, that you're in creating your own genomes, building synthetic human DNA, you could craft your own human, and you could then decide what you want humans to be like. You could, you could, it'd be literally like Frankenstein, who was, was a Genevan scientist, scientific student in the story. Of Frankenstein's monster, and he created a monster from piecing together bits of other humans. Um, Whereas what we're talking about is something even worse than that, if you like, is starting from scratch, and you could grow your own human. I mean, people do that all the time. It's called having children, but in this case, manipulating it to produce something that you just want. Is the? I
Yes.
mean, and thinking about it like that, you'd think, is anything sacred? You're doing your
Well, quite.
ethics, and you've not even thought about God, and you if you're creating a human without God, actually, what you're doing, are you creating a monster? You don't need to wait for. I think in the story of Frankenstein, at least in the movies, not familiar with the book, they had to wait for lightning to strike to get enough power to bring him to life. Now,
Yes.
you don't need lightning for this. You grow it in, well, not a petri dish, but in a similarly nutrient-rich environment. Then you file your ethics paperwork, and there you are, and you got a massive research grant. So that's all. That's all that's required, and you could produce, possibly produce a human. However, they don't need to be doing that. In fact, I don't think that is what they're doing. They're building, they're building up their genome, and inserting them into cells to see scientifically what the rest of the genome is made of. When they've mapped the genome for humans, but there's lots of parts of it that we don't know what it does. I mean, no one knows what it does. To the extent that I've heard some people who, for whatever strange reason of their own, don't believe in God, saying that, as a computer programmer, I see that there's lots of code that's wasted because we don't know what it does. But it's not. It's likely not wasted. It probably is doing something. We just don't know what it is. So, in creating this from scratch, you're able to do experiments with a control. You can actually have an experiment compared with a blank, and find out what the what's known as the dark matter in the genome actually does. So I actually
Yeah.
think it's a good idea. It's scientific
Well,
inquiry.
it does seem that Dr. Julian Sale is the MRC laboratory head of molecular biology in Cambridge, and he was saying the sky's the limit. We are looking at therapies that will improve people's lives as they age, that will lead to healthier aging and with less disease as they get older. And of course, obviously, he's looking to use this approach to generate disease-resistant cells, and they can use it to repopulate damaged organs, for example, in the liver and the heart, even the immune system. But complete contrast, the critics are obviously very concerned on this research. And in fact, what they're really sort of highlighting is some potential unscrupulous researchers. So Dr. Pat Thomas, who's the director of the campaign group Beyond GM, said, we like to think that all scientists are there to do good, but the science can be repurposed to do harm and for warfare. So I suppose you could look at it both ways. Is that, are we looking at, is your cup half full or half empty? I think from my side, I think if it is to solve specific disease issues, it's worth doing. If it's a broader experiment where the principle that it could be used for harm, That's a concern. Now, the trouble is how do you control it? And I guess that's the problem, isn't it? Because science has moved on so much now, and it's become much more prevalent. People throughout the world have, research labs. Who knows what strange experiments are going on around the world, Mr.
Mm.
Pete?
Yes, I think it's better that this is done out in the light in a controlled fashion rather than simply banning it. Once we've arrived at a certain level of knowledge, you can't. It's so difficult to get rid of knowledge. It's a bit like saying, let's pretend we don't know how to build nuclear weapons. No, now we do. So
Yes.
let's instead deal with the world as it really is, which I think you have to in this case. Yes, you don't want people trying to make their own humans, but you do want them using knowledge of DNA to try and cure diseases. So uh, I think some of the fear it comes from misunderstanding of how DNA operates. I mean, just to give one example, if your DNA makes up your genes, so it's how you are made up as a human is coded into the nucleus of every cell, and it's the genes which are made up of DNA. But whether they actually express themselves, whether you actually get that genetic feature, is to a large part also determined, apart from the structure of the DNA and the genes themselves, by your environment. So all the genes are not expressed. So it's not as simple as say, if we tinker with this, we get an evil human. There's lots. It's far more complex than that. And
Yes.
what they're doing at this stage is something quite simple, really. They're simply trying to map out the human genome, make it themselves, such you can then change it and do proper experiments. That's
Yeah.
it seems to me a very sensible way forward, and it's thinking scientifically about this topic, which is a good thing.
Well, I do, and I think transparency is the key. We don't want any more weird, odd monsters of Labour MPs.
No.
But what we do want is something which can solve the challenges of diseases and many other human ailments. Well, I wonder what the rest of our podcasters think and listeners think about
Yes.
some of the points that we've raised today. But certainly, without any doubt, it's been slightly sticky in some places, a few U-turns here and there,
Yes.
and a few monstrous comments.
Yes, that's right. Yes, I remember. Just to give you a Bible verse to finish, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. All this in the light of the Lord's wisdom begins to make a little more sense. But let's sign off for this week from Mark and myself. We hope you have a very good week ahead. Well, until we next meet. Remember, you can make sure that you're subscribed by going to markandpete.com. That enables you to leave a comment on this and every episode. Thanks very much for listening. Catch you next time.